Day 9 of Patriots training camp is in the books post the Tom Brady birthday, August 4th. Now we get serious, I guess, Alex Barth along with Evan Lazar from Gillette Stadium. Evan, your first chance to get out to camp this season. So before we touch on anything specific, just your general impressions of your first day out.
Well, it was a light day of practice today, so we didn't really see much hitting or much contact, but it was great to get out there and see the team and see what we're going to have working here in New England. Obviously, we know the stalwarts, the Bradys and the Gronkowskis and the Edelmans, but we're going to talk about a few guys here today that are a little bit more under the radar.
And we'll talk about those down the roster guys in a bit, but I want to start off with a big name. It's the big story of the day. It actually came after practice. Talking to the media, Trey Flowers was asked about his contract. Now, typical Patriot, he didn't answer. He's worried about this season. It'll take care of itself. Almost word for word what Rob Gronkowski said, by the way, when he was asked about his contract. But, yeah, I mean, it brings up a good point. Trey Flowers is a guy at the end of the season who's going to get paid, whether it's by the Patriots, whether it's a franchise tag, or whether it's elsewhere. He's going to get a pretty good contract, especially with the offseason we've had for defensive linemen thus far. Is it something the Patriots should be concerned about at this point?
I don't know if it's something they should be concerned about because they still have control of him, obviously, for this year, and then they have the franchise tag or a transition tag or anything like that to try to kind of mitigate the blow of if he were to leave. But I definitely think that, just looking at the depth chart, he is by far the best pass rusher that they have on this team, and it is a little bit worrisome without, a guaranteed top 10 pick coming anytime soon, that they're not going to get a guy as good as Trey Flowers or get a guy that they're going to be able to develop as quickly as Trey Flowers has developed. Remember, it's a 4th-round pick. He wasn't really a guy that we really had on our radar necessarily when they drafted him, and all of a sudden now he's the team's best pass rusher.
And we saw DeMarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys get a franchise tag this year. Guys like that. Is Trey Flowers in that conversation? Is he on that level where the Patriots could apply a franchise tag to him? And, I mean, it's a big contract, but it would be worth that money.
Yeah, I would say no, and the reason being is that most of those franchise guys that you see really rack up the sack numbers. And I know that sacks, for me personally, are a little bit of an outdated stat. We have stuff like pressure percentages and stuff like that that Trey Flowers grades out very well in. But the point of the matter is that a guy like a Danielle Hunter, who got a little bit over $14 million a year from Minnesota, DeMarcus Lawrence, as you mentioned, these are guys that have had double-digit sack seasons. Trey Flowers had 8 his second year in the league, but hasn't quite gotten there quite yet. So if he has a big sack season this year where he has 12, 13 sacks, then maybe we could see them, go the franchise route or see him get a contract similar to a Danielle Hunter, 5 years, $70 million, something like that. But that's not going to happen unless he really starts to rack up the sack numbers, just because on the open market, that's really what gets you paid.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, Patriots wide receiver group, there's a lot of question marks there, not necessarily bad things, but nobody's really sure how it's going to twist out. We talked about the Eric Decker signing earlier. You can check that video out on the CLNS Media YouTube channel. But I want to go a little further down the depth chart, Evan. I want to talk about Braxton Berrios, Honey Night Berrios, as we now know his nickname is. Thank you very much to Julian Edelman. At least talking to you during practice, seemed like he stood out to you more than anybody else. Why is that?
Well, they did. It was a very heavy special teams practice, so a lot of return opportunities, and he was back there on punts and kicks. And one thing that I just noticed right away is that his explosiveness is there. I mean, his first step is really good, and he accelerates really quickly down the field. So I think that, as we break camp here and head towards the preseason games, one of the biggest roles to fill for the Patriots is going to be those punt returns with Julian Edelman out the first 4 weeks of the season. Danny Amendola, obviously, now in Miami. So really, what are we looking at here for the Patriots punt returners? Obviously, we've heard a lot of different names have been back there, but all of that can kind of just be washed away if Braxton Berrios can win that job and kind of make himself a name for himself here, which is similar to the way that Julian Edelman got on his start back in 2013, was primarily as a punt returner, as a kick returner, and then eventually he kind of elevated himself to that slot role.
Right. Remember, you talk about the similarities with Edelman's situation. That came towards the end of Wes Welker's contract.
Right.
Julian Edelman's towards the end of a contract right now, coming off a torn ACL, much like Wes Welker was. Do you think Berrios is a guy that they can plug into that slot role? And look, by the time that happens, who knows if Tom Brady will still be here? That's another conversation for another day. We actually had that conversation yesterday, by the way. Check it out on the CLNS YouTube page. But do you think in Josh McDaniels' offense, Braxton Berrios is a guy, not necessarily right now, but down the road who can play that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when in college, when you watch his college tape, you just saw it right away. You're like, this is a Patriots-type receiver. You know, a guy that can really get open, really create after the catch. He's great with the ball in his hands. He's great on those little quick juke routes and return routes over the middle of the field. So I think that it's definitely there for the taking for him, and obviously also there for Riley McCarron, too, if he can kind of get into this conversation as well. But I think that Berrios is a guy that they really targeted, and they kind of knew that they were going to get on day 3 at some point in the draft. So I'm excited to see how he plays in the games, because that's going to really be a nice opportunity for him with Julian Edelman and Chris Hogan and some of the starters kind of resting a little bit probably in the preseason, so we get a chance to see Braxton.
And he looked fast today, even though it was tough conditions. It was raining for most of practice, raining pretty hard. It was a very situational practice. A lot of people would say, oh, it rained at training camp. I think Bill Belichick would tell you it was a great opportunity to get reps in inclement weather. So between the special teams, practicing in the rain, staying out there, running after practice, which not every team does in weather like that, everything, really just another reminder. It was another example of the Patriots playing chess while all the other teams are playing checkers.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and I was like, do the Patriots really do one-on-ones? Because, you know, you go on Twitter and you see guys like Antonio Brown, you know, burning corners on these one-on-one drills, and I was like, we don't get to do that here in New England. Like, we don't get to see any of that happen. So, no, it was nothing like that. We had situational football, special teams. We got to see the punter battle firsthand. Yep. We got to see some returns. We got to see what they're going to kind of do with these new kickoff rules. You know, classic Bill Belichick, you know, we're here in August and we're not doing any one-on-ones. We're going right with the special teams.
And keep an eye on that punter battle. Before we wrap it up, I know we want to touch on this. Ryan Allen, the last year of his deal, and I want to see if you can pronounce it.
Cody Bourgeois-Quez?
Bourgeois.
I'm going to get it by the
We'll learn it if he beats out Ryan Allen. More on that another time. For Campsites, he's Evan Lazar. I'm Alex Barth.